So hi, Becky, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Amy?
I'm great. I wanted to welcome you to our first official Zoom that we've been promising for a month. My bad. And I am so happy you're here to help me with my technological challenges.
Oh, I'm so excited.
And I'm very, very excited about the fact that Women Up International just went live, which was the making of you and Kaelen, and of course graciously added me involved with this. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how you and I met and your story, if you'd be willing to share that with us today.
Oh, I'd be delighted to. Well, we met because I had published a book, and it was an anthology book. Can you see that? It's called We Choose to Thrive.
We can see it. Beautiful.
And this book had the stories of 30 women who had gone through either domestic violence, childhood sexual abuse, some kind of really life-changing thing that oftentimes for many people starts in childhood, but for others it starts as they begin their life as an adult in domestic violence, and it affected all of our lives. I wrote my first book in August of last year.
Yay,
It's
congratulations.
called The Woman I Love, and it's surviving, healing, and thriving after a childhood of sexual, emotional, and physical abuse. My childhood, it started when I don't even know when it was started. I know I tried to run away on the streets of Los Angeles when I was 4. So
and I'm from LA, so that has to have been a very bad situation for somebody to want to leave. Not for you know that, but that's a dangerous place to be running away from in LA for.
Well, at 4, I constantly wonder what happened before then, because one of the protections that many of us that are abuse survivors, especially from childhood, we block out memories. And I'm just happy I don't remember much of that. I have had people that understand, can see the stuff from the past, people that are qualified in those fields, and they say, oh my gosh, what happened when you were 2? I don't know, and I'm happy I don't know.
Right.
What I do know is it colored my world, and as I became an adult, I seemed to attract that only what I knew. And I think that's a pattern for many of us.
I was going to say it's a pattern. We're used to something, and it's hard to break that cycle.
Yes. So, I did eventually break the cycle, and I raised beautiful kids. I was a single mom for 20 years because I was so worried about the fact that I would attract the same thing into my life, and I wanted to make sure I was healed and well.
Right.
And I didn't want to put my children through what I had been through as a kid, and knew I could do a good job on my own, and I did, But still, for me, there was so much that just kept hanging over my head like a blanket. And it seemed like there would be family events. I've had 4 family members take their lives in suicide. And each time I would go into a depression, and it felt like I just constantly this heavy, wet blanket just smothering me. And the last one, I finally said, I'm done with this. I can't take responsibility for what the choices those people are making, my family members. And at the same time, I'm so much more than this,
Right.
And so that's when
can't define you.
No, that's right. And truly, I really liked being happy, and so what I had learned is that you can't dwell on the past and be happy. You can't. No. It's impossible. So I also learned that when you can stand up and tell your story, that as you tell your story and you stand on your story and not in it, that you begin to transform your life and create a new story for yourselves.
That's very powerful.
That's what I have done. And, I'm 60 years old, and on my 60th birthday, I published this book. Since then, 6 months later, I published this book. And this is these women I met after I published my book. I didn't know.
How did they find you?
I started a Facebook group called The Woman I Love. And it was just word of mouth. People introducing people had found out about my book. It just kept snowballing. It was amazing. And I never dreamed I could be an impact on other people's lives the way I've been able to meet.
Isn't that amazing?
To do that. And one of the ladies, Terry Lanahan, who I believe is in your, she's in both of our groups.
She is.
And she's writing currently a book on poetry about her abusive past. And she told me about you. And that's how we met. It's just all these synchronicities just have kept happening. And it's
amazing.
Absolutely amazing. And then from there, I met Kaelen, who has now become my business partner along with you for Women Up International. And oh my goodness, you know, the amazing things that are happening.
I know.
The personal inside growth that's been taking place in me, because I felt like, you know, I was kept as a kid and young adult, I was kept away from television and radio. We didn't have, we couldn't listen to any of those. I was kept away from all family members. We lived very rural. My father moved us away from the streets of Los Angeles to a place out in the mountains that was where, you know, he had isolated. We didn't grow up with family. We didn't grow up. We couldn't have friends over. We couldn't, you know, we were to go to school, come home, no homework. When we came home, that was his time.
Wow.
So, you know, you live this life and you feel all alone. You don't grow up realizing there's help out there, and you don't grow up realizing that you're not the only one, you know? And so as you go into your adulthood, you keep it so quiet. And you put this wall of protection around you, and you don't reach out for help because, well, obviously it was my fault. You know, these things happen. And so we're living in an amazing different world now, you know, because there is so much help out there. There's women like you and I, and Kaelen, and many, many others that are willing to say, this is what happened to me, and let's change this.
And it takes a lot of courage to do that. I mean,
it does.
It does.
But the beauty of it is that once we begin to stand up, it changes everything for us. When we find our voice and start doing something about it, and we learn we're not alone, and as we put our hearts and lock our arms and work together, we're able to share a message and break the pattern of abuse, because as women are able to rise above it, they're better for their families. They're better in turn for their community. Not only are they better for themselves, then they're better for their families, they're better for the community, and then we're better for our world. And that's the key. Statistics are it's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men. What does that tell you? We're a broken world.
We are.
But we don't have to stay that way. And if you change, then somebody else gets the courage to change, and it begins that snowball. And so we break the patterns. We break the patterns of abuse. And I am just joyful that we can be right here, right now, talking about the things that we've gone through, just as you have with your group, and be shining and be happy. You know?
And I think it's so important that you say, you know, you acknowledge the fact that we are in a higher state because we are able to share our stories. But I also think, and I want to acknowledge, you know, obviously we have different situations, and there are people on my site currently that are still struggling with their injustices or other situations, even though like you have on your book. And I think it's just so important that they learn that they're not alone, that there is support out there. And I think Women Up International is a wonderful opportunity for them to be able to maybe tell their story or thrive, or at least watch the videos that you created with Kaelen, which are so beautiful and insightful. I think that there's a lot of shame associated with anything that you go through, whether it's an arrest like I had, or if it's sexual abuse like you had. And I think women have to learn that we are victims, and there is a very big difference between a perpetrator and a victim. And as a victim, we don't live in shame. We have to live in forgiveness, because if we don't forgive, we don't move on. But I also think that sharing your story so you're feeling so supported by other women is such an important part of it. And
yes. And I learned for myself that you have to come to love yourself first.
Right.
And in loving yourself, you begin to forgive yourself. But in forgiving yourself, you get to the point where you may not forgive the actual things that happen to you, but you forgive the situation. I don't think we can ever, there's a line there,
There is one.
And yet if you hold it all in and be angry and hateful about it, that puts that barrier to where we can't grow.
Right.
And so it starts with the courage to stand up and speak up. It's courage to love yourself, which is key, because many of us, oh my goodness, the statistics are terrible, because there's people that cut themselves. There's people that we get involved in drugs. We get involved in alcohol. We get involved in promiscuity, because it's how we're trying to cope with an understanding that we are worth it, that we are worth so much more than that. And yet when we've had these things, sometimes it totally takes us off balance. And now's the time, because there is a sisterhood of support, now's the time we can say, you know what, I can rise above this. And we do it for us.
We do it for us. And I want to add that I think it's important to say that when you and I initially spoke, I was still, like many people I have on my site, I was still in a very angry place. And you were. You don't have to admit it, but I was in a very angry place. And I will say that it was through the acceptance and through the encouragement and through the words that you, Kaelen, and seeing how happy you too have become, that allowed me to say, what is this anger doing for me? Because I'm the only one who's being affected by it.
That's right.
And you really gave me the courage to come out and tell my story, which was way too long, I'm sure, on the Zoom, if you've watched it. But I just want to say thank you, and I think that the books that you have just come out with also, I think it's important. And I'd like to address the one that you did just come out with, if that's okay, because some of the people, as I said, raising awareness for the innocent is not isolated to one group specifically. And one of the books you just wrote, if you'd like to expand just a little bit, because I think it's important for people to understand that it's not just civilians, I think, that are victimized by the system or by their peers. And if you can expand a little bit, if you're comfortable, and share the name of that book, I'd appreciate that.
I didn't write that book. I work with women and men, actually, for self-publishing, but this was written by two women.
Okay.
It was amazing because they wrote, it's called Memoirs of Women in Blue, the good, the bad, and no longer silent. And which is striking to me, because these two ladies, when they wrote, initially put pen names on, and they didn't want to be identified in any way, and they were scared of being identified with their book, but they wanted the book written. And by the time it was over, they were doing live interviews. They're using their
so
names.
Much for being incognito, right?
And but what was so beautiful is that they were telling their stories. And the one lady's African American, the other one's African Hispanic. And within the police force, they served as police women in New York City and became detectives. Both of them did. But the abuse that they received from their male counterparts was incredible. And they see it all the time for women in the police. And it doesn't have to be New York City. It can be just about anywhere. There's a pattern, and so they decided that it needs to change, especially in view of the police violence that is, the public's view of the police and the violence, sometimes the police officers themselves, and they saw so much of that, things that were done that were so wrong. And so it's an education of both the public, and it's an education of those that are called upon to protect and serve.
Well, what I found is so interesting personally, because of my experience, was that, we think of the police protecting the police. And when you told me about this story, it kind of hit me because it's not, obviously, it's not police just protecting police. It's deeper than that. It is a gender thing, and I think that was really kind of from my perspective with what I went through, to realize that the police doing within their own police department was even more. It was a scary thing to have to hear you tell me about, and I did want you to share it because I think that the police are really, we give them a hard time, but people don't realize that what happens behind closed doors isn't always as we're all the fraternity brothers of the blue.
Well, and they even question the code of silence that they're bound to. That's kind of an unwritten rule.
Sure.
Because there were so many things that were unjust that happened, not only within the ranks themselves, but towards the public. And so their biggest thing is that they feel like not only does the law enforcement need to address these issues and grow up, kind of, so to speak, change, break the patterns, but that the public needs to also have a different viewpoint towards those who are called upon to serve us.
Right.
You know.
Well, if you could show us your 2 books again, and the fact that you do offer the opportunity for people to share their stories with you, they can find you on.
I'm on Facebook at the well,
Women Up International. You're all over the place.
I'm all over the place. That's probably the best place to go. And also on the We Choose to Thrive, we are starting another series. And maybe your face someday will be on that series.
How many women do you have so far in that one?
This one had 30.
The next one I'm talking.
And the next one I have 5 right now, but
so you have room for 25. So 25 people out there. I'm just going to say you might have an opportunity, and this is it. And Becky, I know you've changed lives. I saw Kaelen, and Kaelen was one of your original people, and even Terry, who put her beautiful poem on my site, which led me to you. I've just watched, and I'm sure you have as well. So thank you very much for taking the time to be my first official Zoom interview series. And I'm so excited to, and I look forward to what we can do to help all of these women that have gone through things similar to what we've been through, and to keep on thriving and moving forward and raising awareness for the innocent as well.
Very much, and I am so proud of you, Amy, for the changes that you've made since we've met, because I could see when we first started talking, and I saw when we had the discussions about you have to be well within, right? I saw the lights turn on, and I saw the smile begin to happen, and now you radiate with the smile, even though you still have a lot of stuff that you're facing with all the stuff that you're taking, your freedom, and clearing yourself and being vindicated, but at the same time, you've been willing to step up and be happy regardless, and
find my voice, and find my voice. And I really appreciate you saying that, because I know you talk to women all day. And on that note, I think it's important. The only thing that I will want to say about that is my voice, the minute I had my null pros, which is a 2-year statute of limitations, I shouldn't be really talking about my stuff because I risk going to court, and that's not an option either, because I don't have the fear and will not have the intimidation to keep my voice silenced in such a corrupt situation. And you've helped me take my voice from a very angry, rebellious, I want to take down the world, come with me, to a place of, it's my voice. It will be told, and if I can help make people feel that there's hope, that is the most important thing on my journey, is to make change and hope and bring awareness that there is happiness on the other side once you can let go of that anger, which is really a tough thing to do. But I do attribute much of that to you and Kaelen, and that's why I'm so thrilled to be a part of what is being created right now for this. So,
delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and I hope that everybody enjoyed this. And let's look forward to the next one.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.